Thanks for joining me on episode 903 of the Inspired Stewardship Podcast.
I'm Matt.
And I'm Jocelyn.
From the Family Life Movement Podcast.
We challenge you to find a way to balance your work and your family, and one way to be inspired to do that is to listen to this.
The Inspired Stewardship Podcast by my friend Scott Mader.
It's about talking about your life and your time and how you view things and what you think and what you've noticed. It's also not the time for accusing each other. It's not the time for saying, you didn't do this or why didn't you do this? Instead, it's the time for solving problems and making sure that we've got a plan in the future that works a little better. It's not about beating each other up about the past.
Welcome and thank you for joining us on the Inspired Stewardship Podcast. If you truly desire to become the person who God wants you to be, then you must learn to use your time, your talent, and your treasures for your true calling. In the Inspired Stewardship Podcast, you will learn to invest in yourself, invest in others, and develop your influence so that you can impact the world.
In today's episode about investing in others by stewarding your time, I talk with you about how there's a weekly meeting structure that we can use that can help our productivity. I share why this works for both couples and singles, and I also share some of the things that we can do and think about during that weekly review. As we talk about stewarding your time, wouldn't it be great if you could support this podcast and do it without just taking too long? Turns out you can. All you have to do is use inspiredstewardship.com/Amazon when you're ready to make a purchase via Amazon, and a small commission will come back to support the show just that quick. If you enjoy the show when you are ready to buy from Amazon, just use inspiredstewardship.com/Amazon. So I've talked before about having a weekly meeting in terms of your money. And I've talked before about how when it comes to your time, there's the need to actually plan and review your time. But I wanted to marry those two things together. I think it is important to have a weekly meeting that both touches on three different areas. It touches on time, it touches on relationship, and it touches on treasures, on money. So I wanted to unpack each of those areas this week and talk a little bit more about the weekly meeting, the structure of it, why it's important. And today I'm going to focus on how it can help you with your productivity, with your time. See, one of the things that I've noticed over the years is that whether you're single or whether you're a couple, we often spend a lot of time and energy on different things, but we don't actually pay that much attention to the benefits of it, to the good of it, to what's working well, to what we're struggling with. Instead, we just end up with a system that came by default, and then we stick with it forever out of inertia. It's easier to just keep doing the same thing than it is to put in the time and effort to change. And having a regular appointment with yourself, or if you're a couple, an appointment with your partner, can be really important for paying attention to what we're doing with our time. In this weekly meeting, the idea is that you review what happened last week, you look forward at what's coming up, you look at your schedule, you look at your calendar, you review any things in that are going to have an impact on money or on relationship or on time. Perhaps one of you has to go and pick up the kids on a particular day, and you're going to run later into the day, and that affects meals, that affects money, that affects relationship, and it obviously affects your schedule and your ability to get things done. But instead, what often happens is it's suddenly a surprise, and you're talking frantically on Thursday morning about the fact that we've got to pick up the kids tonight and who's going to pick them up, because you haven't set up a regular routine of looking for these things each and every week. Now, the truth is, obviously, there's going to be emergencies that come up. Things are going to happen where someone gets sick or a car breaks down or other things that create a bump in the schedule, that create a disruption in what you thought was going to happen. But one of the things that helps you roll with the punches and make adjustments is when you've got a relatively firm schedule to start with, then all of a sudden it becomes much easier to make those adjustments because you can look and very quickly understand what can give, what can't give. What are the things that just aren't flexible and what are the things that are? What goes first and what goes second? If you have to open up time to take care of a sick family member, you know that you can do that because you know what you can give up, and it becomes a deliberate choice instead of a reactive one. This is the power of a regular weekly meeting. And again, if you've got a couple going on, it becomes powerful as well because now you're setting up a regular time to communicate. And instead of drifting apart, you can become more on one page. You can think about what's coming up. You can think about how are we different from each other? What is it about me and the way I'm looking at time versus the way my partner is? Because I can almost guarantee you, if you're in a relationship, the two of you are different. So for singles, it's powerful because it allows you to be active and proactive instead of reactive and really think about your day and your time and what's going on. For couples, it adds that additional layer of accountability and communication. For singles, I still recommend that if possible, you do some of this with a coach so that you do have some accountability, or you find an accountability buddy, somebody else that checks in with you and makes sure that you're doing it on a regular schedule. But the truth is, just doing it is powerful, and you'll see the benefits. For couples, I recommend that you set this up as a regular appointment with each other, preferably after the kids have gone to bed in some sort of neutral territory, perhaps with a adult beverage or with some time and energy. Maybe I know some people that take a walk while they're doing it. I know others that do that where in a relaxed environment like a hot tub. The point is, it's not about doing this in kind of a work, this is a meeting and we must have this meeting today, but rather it's about getting on the same page. It's about talking about your life and your time and how you view things and what you think and what you've noticed. It's also not the time for accusing each other. It's not the time for saying, you didn't do this or why didn't you do this? Instead, it's the time for solving problems and making sure that we've got a plan in the future that works a little better. It's not about beating each other up about the past. And when you look at the weekly meeting that way, you recognize that over time, you should get better and better at recognizing what are the things that are keeping you from getting done what you want to get done. And you can make small incremental improvements until it gets to the place that you want it to be. Thanks for listening.
Thanks so much for listening to the Inspired Stewardship Podcast. As a subscriber and listener, we challenge you to not just sit back and passively listen, but act on what you've heard and find a way to live your calling. If you like this episode on the stewardship of time, be sure to sign up for our Stewardship of Time Tips series by going to inspiredstewardship.com/time or texting 44222 time tips, and that'll get you our best tips on stewarding your time. Until next time, invest your time, your talent, and your treasures. Develop your influence and impact the world.